Hey everyone, welcome to the broadcast. I am Marla Martinson, your mystical matchmaker and boundary coach, and I'm with the amazing Martha Bodyfelt, divorce coach and dating coach as well. Hey Martha, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be back talking to you, Marla. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about, and I can't wait to share that with your audience.
We've got a lot to cover, and Martha's been on the podcast before, and we've talked about, breakups, and she's really an expert in people going through a divorce, women going through a divorce, and Martha, I've worked with you. You guys. Martha was my coach, and gosh, it's interesting how I see myself. Uh, it's been hard for me, Martha. It's been hard for me to. It's been a year and a half, really,
Yeah,
since I've been separated. It's been hard for me to
yeah,
admit that I'm getting a divorce, admit that my 20-year marriage is over, admit that I don't live in Los Angeles anymore, admit that it's like I kind
yeah,
of dance around this. And I'm sure there's women out there,
yeah.
and the holidays are coming. So, you guys, I wanted to have Martha on to talk about this delicate time. I mean, last Christmas was the first Christmas I was without my husband in 20 years. We had our same routine, and I cried the whole day. It was miserable. Sat at dinner with some family members crying. I mean, I'm sure I didn't make their Christmas any joy, and and so there's a lot of women out there who are going through a breakup, maybe have gone through it, can't get over it. So, Martha, I know you've got a lot of great, juicy tips on how we can make it a little easier. I mean, I know it's not going to be like nothing happened, but what do you
Right.
have to say on this topic?
Right, absolutely. So I think that there's a couple things. And before I was a dating and relationship coach for women over 40 and better, I spent quite a bit of time learning my craft as a certified coach, working in the divorce coaching and divorce recovery coaching sphere. And so I did that for about 6 to 7 years. And the holidays, as somebody who, it seems like ancient history, but as somebody about 12, 13 years ago, whose husband left right during the Christmas season, I can totally relate to just kind of like the crazy drama and just the crazy kind of like rawness of emotions that we're all going through. So there are, I think, a couple of things that I would just kind of offer your audience, and then we can talk about that a little bit more. So I think the number one is that be very careful of selective memory, because whether this is your first Christmas without your spouse, whether this is your fifth Christmas without your spouse, and you are still grieving and you're still being triggered, understand that the things that you're thinking of, well, I remember when we bought the Christmas tree, or I remember when the kids were opening the presents and all this and that. Understand that that is your memory playing tricks on you. Were those good times? Yes. But what your memory is doing, and why that is coming to the forefront of your mind, is because it is actually your mind's way of protecting you from remembering all the terrible, horrible things. Because remember the holiday, we don't think about right away when there was a fight, or when, maybe your ex-husband threw a plate, or your child started to cry. And there's just all these terrible memories that when we are no longer in that marriage, we aren't thinking about, because we're doing that almost as like a form of survival, that our brain is actually putting that to the forefront. So that is when we get nostalgic. That is when we get whimsical. That is when we want to reach out and text our ex saying, oh, well, I hope you're having a Merry Christmas. Oh, do you remember XYZ? So understand that you are going to be subject to selective memory. And that is just something that your mind is doing to kind of protect you from the trauma that you are actually experiencing, which may have led to the divorce. So that is my first thing, is just be very, very aware of that. And what you can do with that is, if you start getting whimsical or you start remembering only the good stuff, you have the permission and the responsibility to tell yourself, look, there were good times, but there is a reason that you were not celebrating Christmas with that spouse. There is a reason now that you are not with that spouse, because you guys are no longer aligned. You're no longer compatible. And so just bring yourself back to that, so you didn't get stuck in what I call the selective memory. So
Yeah.
so that would be my first one. I think my second kind of offering to the audience is that cut off contact. And I know, Marla, that is something that you and I have talked about before when we were coaching together. This is something that I work with my clients as well, that unless you are in a situation where you have joint custody and you are trying to figure out that, for some reason, if you're splitting the kids during Christmas, which I don't know, the divorce lawyers that I know and the family mediators I know, that doesn't happen usually, but let's say it does. And, you have your kids and, your kids are under 18, you have your kids for Christmas Eve, and then you have to drop them off at the ex's or the soon to be ex's house on Christmas Day. That, as far as any transactional or co-parenting, that is literally the only contact you should be having with your spouse. Cut your contact with your spouse. You don't need to text him to say, oh, I wish you a Merry Christmas, or, oh, do you remember so-and-so? No, because what you're doing is you're reopening the wound. And
what about, I want to interject here. What about people? Some people stay good friends. Yeah. Because I'm a matchmaker, I'm interviewing women constantly, thousands of women. And I ask, what's your situation, divorce? And yesterday a woman says, yeah, I'm divorced, but we're great friends. We just weren't aligned. We talk. First
shit show of a separation, when you realize that you are no longer aligned with one another, you're not feeling friendly. So what I would advise, and this is something that I had gone through with my own separation over 10 years ago, and something that I have seen my clients as well as good friends who are going through a separation or a breakup or a divorce as well, especially during the holidays, is if you are still grieving that relationship, and if you can't have a conversation without afterwards breaking down into tears, do not be friends with that person till then, because friendship is going to have an equal balance of it should be balanced. And if you're still crying and you're still grieving, and if you're still on the opioid of hey, you know what, maybe we will get back. That's a opioid. That's what we call it. If you're still on the opioid, you shouldn't be friends with that person. Bottom line, full stop, because it only is going to guarantee just problems for you and a lack of healing. However, like you'd said, you had a client that says, yeah, we're good friends. That is great if you're able to heal and move on, and after you've done that process. But you can't do that process if you're still at ground zero. Oh, what's this? Oh, do you want to come over? Oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And you guys are still fighting, or you are still very much having strong feelings for this person and you're still grieving. Bottom line, you can't be friends with somebody where you're still grieving their loss. You can't be friends with somebody if you're still hoping that they want to be married with you. You can't be friends with somebody if there's a chance that you're going to sleep with them and get into that whole emotional kind of spiral again. You can't be friends with them that way. Now, if you are beyond that and you're great co-parents and, all of that, yeah, you can be friends with them. But most women who are going through separation are not at that stage yet. So don't play that game. You're only setting yourself up for failure and for delayed healing, which could take years and years more than you need it to.
I know there's a lot of women who it just seems like it's never going to clear and end, and you don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. How long with your clients, Martha, would you see that it would take them to kind of heal? Because some people might think, well, how long does this take? I mean, typical, it's different for everybody.
Right. So no, it's a great question. And as much as everybody loves to have the estimation or the approximation or the range from a coach, because then that gives them something to kind of checkbox, you can't checkbox your healing. But here's what I can give you, and here's what I can give your clients as well as your audience, is that your success at healing and moving on is directly proportional to the amount of effort you put in to healing and moving on. Now, the amount of effort you're putting into healing and moving on is not texting your fucking husband. Pardon my French. Can I speak on this podcast? I don't know. Can I swear on this podcast? Yes. I don't know. Okay. And so if you are texting your ex, if you're saying, oh, do you remember this time? If you're feeling alone at home and you're like, I'll never get on with my life, XYZ, and you're not doing anything to take control of your healing, it's going to be a lot harder. I have worked with women who were divorced for 10 years, but because they never took charge of their healing and they never got the help they needed, whether it was talking to a good therapist, whether it was going to a support group that was not a bitch session, but was actually action oriented, or even going with a divorce coach, a divorce recovery coach, or throwing themselves into things that they loved, like pursuing their passions or their hobbies, or putting themselves first, or reclaiming their lives, which most women haven't been able to do, certainly women of a certain age. If you are not doing that, healing is going to be very, very hard for you. And so here's what I like to say, that I see divorce recovery and recovery from grief of the ending of a relationship is much like a shattered foot. Now, I love to use this example because when I was in the Army, I was doing a 15-mile ruck march and I shattered my foot in the middle of it. Didn't know the foot was shattered, and I finished the 15-mile ruck march. So never asked me to go hiking, but that's my own trauma I work through. But here's the thing: if you break your foot, and if you just continue to walk on the foot and walk on the foot, eventually, most likely your bones are going to heal, but they may not be healing in a way where you can properly walk and properly use that foot again. However, when that foot is in a cast for 5 or 6 weeks, or if the foot is so shattered that you have to put a plate in it, and, then you go to physical therapy for, a good month or 2 months, and you continue to do those exercises after physical therapy, what happens? Your foot gets stronger. Your foot actually goes back to the same kind of operability and even greater range of motion, and sometimes even better than the foot. Most of the time, even better as somebody who's broken her foot twice, stronger than the foot had it never been broken. So why am I bringing this up? I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, but what I am is a survivor of a messy divorce who was actually able to successfully, years later, find love and secure love again. Mm-hmm. However, the amount is going to depend on what you are doing for yourself. And I know, unfortunately, a lot of times women, when they do divorce, they become like the single moms, or they become the primary caretaker or the primary caregiver of the children. And what they do is they put all of that effort on raising the kids, which is great, but then you're neglecting yourself. And so I've seen that happen with a lot of women who feel stuck. They've been divorced for 5 years, 10 years, well after their kids have gone to college, and they're still not able to move on. They're not dating, or if they are, they're finding men that are horrible for them, who are no better, who treat them maybe even worse than their husbands because they have not done the work. And so I cannot tell you, and I cannot tell your clients, because I just would not be responsible as a coach, oh, you know what, in 3 months. But here's what I can tell you. You will no longer have that horrible, that epicenter of pain, like the nuclear epicenter, like after like a nuclear explosion. You are not, that is not going to feel nearly as bad, and the intensity of that goes away. The more you put yourself first, the more you invest in that. And so even that can even go away, and that can be minimized even in a couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's up to you, and it's up to for the person going through divorce, for the woman to take responsibility for her own healing. And you're not doing that when you're going through selective memory. You're not doing that when you're contacting your ex, unless it's for co-parenting. Mm-hmm. Simply not going to happen.
Yeah, and you brought up dating. What do you see with that? I mean, I know men sometimes will jump right in. They don't want to be alone, but the women will take more time to work on themselves. Also, when you talked about, doing the work and cleaning up those patterns, because we do tend to, a lot of the women, the narcissistic word comes up a lot lately, and we're verbally abused, emotionally abused, or whatever. And it's familiar. It's what we know. And we seem to repeat those patterns. So what do you suggest so that a woman doesn't step into that doo-doo again? Step into that dog.
No, absolutely. No, it's wonderful. No, and I'm really happy that you asked that, because chances are, if you are stepping into that you are replicating patterns that probably started before you even started to date, before you were even married. And you are replicating patterns that you possibly saw and noticed and picked up when you were young. And it was probably from dysfunctional family dynamics. It was probably from, and there's a great amount of work dealing with this now, like with somatic healing and look at like trigger point healing and things like that. But it is, you are probably replicating, like if you're a people pleaser, and so you are going to be, and you find yourself kind of drawing to men who are, emotionally abusive, and you're just kind of placating them. It is almost getting very clear. And well, why am I doing that? Why am I a people pleaser? Well, it's probably a people pleaser if that was how you were rewarded when you were little. If you came from a chaotic home, but you were a little girl who got good grades, that might have been the only time that you felt safe and you felt good and you were actually getting recognition from your parents, was when you were doing something, when you were being the good girl. And so looking at, well, why was that? Going back to what family patterns might have caused me to be like this. And then whether it is with neuro-linguistic programming, whether it's going to a good therapist, whether it's, I would love to have audience members who are struggling with this join me in my Ready for Love group coaching program that's going to start again in February, going through this. And so as not to attract men again who are no longer aligned with you, and this is the, you know, the wonderful fellas in the audience too, who may have been, you know, attracted or keep getting into patterns with the same type of, you know, women who who don't align with them. It is to recognize, what did I like about the past relationships? What made me feel good? What did I not like about myself? What maybe did I contribute to the fall of a relationship? What do I believe about myself? And this is the main one here. What do I believe about myself that no longer is serving me? We call them limiting beliefs, or I like to call them beliefs that you've grown out of.
Yeah.
That you are trying to mold yourself into, such as, I am not worthy. This is the only person that I can get. How do you want to rework that to make it healthy? What are my patterns of self-sabotage that I need to stop? And getting very clear on that, so then you can put in reprogramming of healthier narratives that are going to help you and repel you from going and dating men who are no better than your ex-husband. Because what I've seen that is, if folks who are with narcissists, they've usually been with narcissists. So there's a pattern there. And so the pattern is, and the commonality is that person. So what is it that you're doing that is maybe, you know, that has drawn you to men like that? And so, but it has to start with you.
The interesting thing is, because I was, since high school, I mean, for 40 years of that type of personality, I would be gravitated to and get involved with. And you don't, in the beginning, sometimes in the beginning, the flags are there, but you just don't really want to see it because the guy's so cute or whatever. Then other times,
they always are.
Other times it seems perfectly normal for a few months in, and then you're in, and you're like, oh God, and then you're in love and you've moved in, and then you see the signs, and it's a big mess. And like with me, I could never get around it. I could never get, things would happen with the you know, I remember I was married to a man in my 30s for 7 years, and it was just the put downs and insults and diminishing. And I guess it would just hit me so many times, like in shock. And then you don't know what to say and you try to fight back, but it doesn't work. And then you look like a immature for trying to fight back. And so that's a lot of work around this narcissistic thing. But it's a big, I think you said that most of your clients that would come to you, the women, have been involved with a narcissistic type of man.
Certainly. And that seems to be the pattern, that if they had a boyfriend who was a narcissist, and then they had a husband who was a narcissist, and maybe when they were dating afterwards, they may have been dating narcissists. So when they came to me, when I was working more in the sphere of divorce recovery, it was, you know, these women who were very successful, professionally successful, have, you know, pretty good friends, pretty good families, you know, adult kids that they get along with and are good relationships with, but their self-esteem and their self-worth was like non-existent, because they had been in these abusive relationships for years, if not decades, and didn't even know, they just didn't even have that muscle because it had been completely erased from this abusive relationship. And so the work that I was very privileged and I was very lucky to do, working within divorce recovery, was to help women regain their confidence for them, not for dating, not for this, but for themselves. And a lot of women, I would say, especially women at midlife, women 40 and better, were never even taught or conditioned to be able to stick up for themselves or to define what it is that I want to do. Because we as women are usually, well, I always have to take care of everybody. I always have to do everything for everybody else. And to put yourself first and to figure out what you like was just considered a very selfish thing. And so the beautiful work that I get to do is helping women rewire that belief system so they don't fall into those patterns again. Or so it doesn't take them years and years and years to recover from their, you know, from their abusive relationship. And so it is about rewiring that belief system, because we, and probably you as a matchmaker, probably work with folks who, that they're still operating on these old scripts that no longer work.
Yeah.
And unless you fix that, and unless you rebuild your self-esteem and you rebuild your self-worth, you will continue to be in relationships that are not healthy for you. Like, full stop. And even if you find a wonderful person, a Prince Charming, your self-sabotage might jeopardize that relationship, even if it is with a wonderful man. And so you have to work on that. It starts with you.
Wonderful. Now, are you not working with divorced ladies anymore? Are you more doing the dating?
So I am working with divorced women so much as one of the beautiful things that I witnessed as a divorce recovery coach is there was kind of a time, it was like a timeline of healing, that when I was working with the women that, I might have been working with them for a year or 2 years, and they felt that they were in a really good place, confident. And I saw that beautiful transformation with them, that they felt confident, they were putting themselves first, that they were doing those things, that they were getting very solid on their boundaries, especially with their family members, which can be the hardest boundaries to have. And they would say to me, Martha, I think I want to date again, but I know that I don't want to date people who were like my ex-husband. I haven't dated a lot of the folks I haven't dated in decades. Yeah. Where do I start? And so I do still work with divorced women, but it is divorced women who have already been on that healing journey, because if I'm in an interview and I can tell that they still need that work, I'm happy to refer them to some incredible divorce coaches that I know. But I will not work with women if I know that they are not ready for the relationship, for relationships yet. And so divorced women, I do work with them, but it is divorced women who are far enough on their recovery journey that they are ready for love. And they're just like, well, what does that look like? What do I need to do? I want to learn how to date successfully. And so that's kind of the beautiful work that I do, not only with divorced women, but I work also with women who are widows, who have had their husbands passed. I also work with women who maybe are in their early to mid 40s and beyond, or any woman who's that's the cutoff, is you have to be over 40 to work with me. And women who maybe were just never married. And they're like, you know what, I don't really even care about the marriage anymore, but I would love to have a long-term companion and partner. But they're just kind of in this weird world of they don't want to date like they're 25 anymore, but they don't really know if they want to do online dating. And when they've tried to go on to the dating apps, they just get very kind of cynical. They're like, I don't want to do this. I guess I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. And so that's the incredible work that I do in my Ready for Love group coaching program. Is we actually look at getting very clear on what is it, why are the reasons that you want to date again, and having to actually have like the right reasons for dating again, looking at any possible limiting beliefs for self-sabotage that you could fall into, and making sure that those holes are filled up before you date again, as well as getting confident and learning how to date in a way that's good for you, because not everybody is the same type of dater. And then we form the connection of, how do we look at a dating strategy where you can date, if you want to do online dating, fine, but how are ways that you can actually get out and not use apps and connect in real life? And so these are these kind of so I think most of the women that I work with now are, I would say, at least 2 to 3 years after their divorce, and they've taken that time to heal and work on themselves, and they're like, you know what, I want to see what's out there, but I don't want to be scammed, or I don't want to find someone who's a jerk like my ex-husband. And that's where they come to me, and we do that beautiful work to get them to date successfully and date from a healthy place, so they can find the love of their life.
So, and before I let you go, I wanted to bring up one other thing. I know that you mentioned before about, the age of women. Sometimes we think over a certain age, oh my God, I'm, 60, 70, 80, and I don't want to be alone, but it's, how can I date? How can I start over with somebody else? How can I leave this person if I've been with him 30, 40 years? Some women are leaving men after 40 years because they can't take the abuse anymore. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually a psychic, and she said, because psychics get a lot of calls for love, on love.
Oh, of course they do.
So and you guys, I do readings. So if you need a love reading, you could always call me or contact me. But she said, Marla, because I was talking to her and I was so upset, and I'm older, but So she says, I have a client, a regular client who calls me for readings, and she's
Mm-hmm.
80 years old and she's in
Mm-hmm.
a relationship with a narcissist. He's 85. He's still abusing her. She's miserable, but she's not going to leave at 80. It's too old. She can't, she's stuck. And so this is how she's going to be ending her life is in an abusive relationship. And she says, you don't want to do so if it's okay if you're 50, 60, 70, 70, you can still, right? I mean, you have had women in the 70s, right? That
In
have
the 80s.
in
In
the
the
80s,
80s.
they
Yeah.
did. Because some of the ladies in the 80s are able and energetic and healthy and could leave. Some maybe
Right.
their
Right. I
situation.
mean, and that, that bears a little bit, little bit of detour from the dating coaching, but what we look at is, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a coach. I'm, heart-centered coach. But for women, it doesn't matter your age. If you are in an abusive relationship, if any of these listeners are out here, please know that there are free resources and there are people out there who can help you. And I don't know if, Marla, you include, some of those resources, but even, if that is a situation that if anybody's in, just know that there are resources regardless of your age to exit that. Probably one of the first ones that I would recommend is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, to take a look at, because it doesn't matter your age. Nobody deserves to stay in an abusive relationship. It doesn't matter if you've been in that relationship for 60 years. No,
Or
you
even if
deserve to
it's
get
not,
out, and you
if
will get
it's not
out.
even to the point where you have to call a hotline, but it's just that verbal, abuse, emotional abuse that you've been used
Right.
to your whole life, that it's not going to
Right. But
danger,
it's
but
not a death sentence.
it,
Right. But then that's the thing is
yeah.
I would offer, because I've worked with clients from 19 to 88. Working with
88. I
divorce as
love
well as
it.
working with
Wow.
dating. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And she's rocking it. She's in Chicago. She's incredible.
Oh,
But that is something that, just because we as women have fought too hard and have come too far to have to stay in those relationships. Those relationships, we should never have had to stay in them anyway. But when you would hear things, much like, think of your grandmother, anybody's grandmother, great grandmother, that, oh, well, in my day, we would be married for 75 years. But it's almost like, well, were you in that marriage for 75 years or whatever it was because you were not legally able to get your own bank account? You couldn't even have your own credit card. You would get fired if you were pregnant. And
yeah.
so understanding that long marriage is not a success, that's not the metric. The marriage is a successful marriage is if you guys can grow together and
Yeah.
there's love and respect and communication. That is the metric of a successful marriage or any successful relationship, because I know there's a lot of folks who just aren't into marriage, and that's fine. But that is a marker of a successful marriage, not how long you've stayed together. Because a lot of times, if you see this, especially with, generations before us, yeah, it was long, but who knows what the poor women were dealing with in that relationship. But they had no recourse. They had no outlet. And we
And,
do
and,
now, so
and
there's
it's
no
not,
excuse.
and I would even say, when you're out there dating and people ask, oh, what happened with your last relationship, or how many, people, maybe they've been married before, twice, three times, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you got married at 19 and then you got married again at 30 and then you got married again at 50, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's okay. It's not a failure, because you are growing. You're not the same person that you were. Maybe you're not aligned anymore and you let each other go and you're on to your next adventure. So I would say never let anyone make you feel like, oh, well, you can't even keep your own marriage together. It wasn't a success. It was a failure. I don't see it as that. It's growing, learning, healing, and so
Absolutely. And I think there's two things that one of the things that I would offer on that is that it's perfectly fine to be remarried again or things like that. Something I would offer, what I have seen with a couple of clients before they worked with me, is they had been through maybe 5 or 6 marriages and they had never been single by themselves for more than a year. And so if you find yourself in a situation where you are going from one man to the next, what I would kind of invite is to do, I would say, a 6-month. I think that is the most successful thing I've seen with clients. That is something that I have done for myself in the past, is doing like not dating for 6 months and taking that time to focus on yourself, taking that time to figure out what did I contribute to this relationship, because there are, except for like in cases of very abusive situations, and that's not what we're talking about. But when there are relationships that don't end, that end, poorly, and in thinking, well, what did I do? What could I have done better? And not to like go and be revisionist history, but hey, next thing, I know I want to communicate with the partner if something he says bugs me. I want to be more assertive in, I don't really like when you do that, or hey, I really liked when you did that. And so knowing that and really kind of being able to analyze that and work on, what do I want? What do I really want? I know what I don't want. What do I not want? And doing that and taking that beautiful work on yourself instead of just hurrying and jumping into another relationship, because you need to have that time, and then you can go into another wonderful relationship.
Yes.
And so that's what I would offer folks.
Absolutely. Even minimum 6 months, even a year is good. Just doing your body work, your pattern work, your mind work, all body
and having fun with your friends, having fun with yourself.
Oh yeah, there's so many things that you could get into, that you can learn a new language or
go travel or doing it, or go to a wine festival or a street festival. I mean, so many fun things.
I did a lot of street festivals and spiritual retreats. If you can afford to do one of those, oh my God, they have to have them. They take you. There's all over the world. I went to one in Mount Shasta in July, and you're getting to the next level energetically.
Take a hot bath or read a book. I remember going through my separation, and it was how it was in the state of Virginia. I was in Virginia at the time. I think you had to be separated for a year, and I think it's a lot of places before you can file. And in that time, like, I went to pastry school. I became a pastry chef. I started my sommelier training, which is the wine experts, and started to travel by myself. And and I do understand a lot of folks maybe don't have those means to do all of the things. And I hate that whole eat, pray, love thing. But regardless of kind of where you are, doesn't matter how much money you're making, you can go to the library and check out a good book for free. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of free things going on in cities, and even just the farmers market.
Towns,
whatever. Yeah, you can really do, and it's fun. So happy holidays, everyone, and reach out if you need to Martha. All of her links are in the show notes, and also I'm a boundary coach, and I have a new relationship blueprint group coaching coming out for the new year. So get on our newsletters, go to our websites. They're all there. And you've got a newsletter, right, Martha?
Absolutely. So for anybody who's interested, definitely head on over to marthabodyfelt.com and sign up for the free newsletter. And in addition to that, I have a private Facebook group called Empower Dating for Women that has great daily advice. It has completely free trainings that are going to kick your ass, but in a good way. And that is something that I'm really trying to build right now. So for any of the listeners who are on Facebook, we would love to have you over there, as well as, I think it'll be in the links, and I don't know if I've sent it to you, Marla, but I sure will. I have a new YouTube channel where we're just doing dating specific classes, master classes, completely free of charge, for learning how to date better at midlife.
I love it. What's the YouTube channel called?
So it's that weird little number thing, because I don't have like actually, yes, I do. I take that back. It is at Dating Coach Martha Bodyfelt.
I love it. And we're both on Instagram. So all the links are there. But all right. So connect with us. We're here to help. And thanks for joining us. And thanks, Martha, for being here again. Much love.
You're welcome.